Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm joined by Gabe. Welcome to the channel, Gabe.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Hope you're doing well.
Excellent. So today we're going to be discussing schizophrenia and symptoms and some medications, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So we'll just start with you, Gabe. So what are some of the symptoms that you noticed early on, and how did that kind of like progress for you? Once you're diagnosed, and what were the experiences like at the beginning of your diagnosis and when you first started experiencing this?
Well, by definition, schizophrenia is a very unique mental issue. It affects everyone a little bit differently. In my case, it was seeing and hearing things, like auditory hallucinations and seeing things that weren't actually there. Those are called hallucinations. I also had disorganized speech, like jumbled up words and just not getting them out properly. That kind of also coincides with motor behavior and negative symptoms. Pretty much it ties in with depression and anxiety. So obviously my depression kicked in and I'm like, why am I this way? What the hell's going on? I don't know. And I almost gave up until I forced myself to, go talk to somebody, and they're like, "Yeah, you have schizophrenia."
Was it a
Surprise!
psychiatrist or was it a therapist that you first talked to?
It was actually a psychiatrist.
And then he kind of like died. Actually, when I first got diagnosed, I was 15, and it was basically like I said, basically what you just said, and I described my experiences. Seeing things out of the corner of my eye constantly, seeing things that weren't there, where they would be there for like seconds and then just blink out of existence.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's centered around like horror movies, like The Ring Girl. I would see her and she would just be there and then she'd blink out of existence, something like that. Um, and then another thing that I wanted to ask that I haven't always heard from schizophrenics. So sometimes when we're going to sleep, at least before I was medicated, sometimes I would actually very often I would see like these tentacles on the ceiling and these eyes coming out of the tentacles. Did you have any like symptoms around when you were trying to go to sleep? Were there like specific ones?
Um, Somewhat fairly often, yeah. Before I started medication, it kind of varied. It was either seeing something kind of resembling tentacles. I don't know if it was just because I was watching anime. We all know how that goes.
Yeah.
Um, I could see myself in like the third person being shot. It was weird. Um, just a bunch of different things. It's like I said, it's unique to every person and how they how to describe it, um, grasp the world around them and how they deal with it. You
Yeah,
know,
because
some,
it's physical perspective, but then it's also thinking perspective. Does that
mm,
make sense?
yes, we have as humans, we have this bad habit of what's called compartmentalizing, where we take negative emotions or negative thinking habits or just trauma, putting them in a so-called filing cabinet in our brains, and it's kind of like a crock pot. Set it and forget it. And then eventually they come back to haunt us.
Yeah, because I mean, if you shove enough things in those rooms, they burst out.
And schizophrenia does not help with these because it will find a way to break the lock and it will rear its ugly head.
And like I feel, so we're both medicated, but is do you feel like therapy really helped you? Did it take a while to find a good therapist to like actually work these things out? Because I mean, actual like verbal like talking things out therapy is a huge component. And did it take a while to find a good therapist, or was it easy?
It actually took quite a bit of time, about 2.5 years actually. Um, I was on a waiting list for quite some time at the local MHMR, just because they were still trying to figure out, it's like, okay, why does he have schizophrenia? Why does he have bipolar type 2? All these other combination of things. And we were trying medications after medications after medications. And finally, I found a therapist that actually worked. We did something called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT for short. Um, that actually really helped. because it was somebody who I could just, vent and let out to, and they analyzed and gave a good, response back. It's like, okay, well, now I think I understand a little bit more. Okay, I'm not 100% crazy. I'm only maybe like 2% crazy. All right, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because it took me years too to find like a good therapist, because it seems like there's a lot of ones like caught in the system that either have bad training or they got a bad way of treating people early on in their experiences, and they just keep on using it, never get it out of their head.
Mhm.
So it does take time, man, and it's so refreshing when you find one. And the abusive ones in the system are really big problems, and some of those go unreported for a long time because we
Yes.
already have problems, so like it's hard for us to like report. And then obviously we're not credible because we're schizophrenic, and then so there's a whole lot of ones caught in the system that just really need to get out of there. But it's always refreshing to find a good one. So like with your experiences with therapists before you found a good one, was it just like they didn't know exactly how to treat you, or they didn't know exactly they didn't have a good technique? Is there something that was like bad about them?
It was kind of a combination. Um, they really just didn't understand what was going through my head, even though I tried to explain to them multiple times in several different formats. This is what's going on in my head. Obviously, something's not right here. Help, please. And well, the last, or not the last one, second to last one was just like, oh, yep, psych, where'd you go? Okay, really?
Yeah.
Oh, we might try electroshock therapy. And I'm like, nope, we're not
I
going
got
to do that.
recommended that too by a nurse practitioner. He wanted to do that to me, and I was like, what scared me about it was losing memory and knowing who I was for seconds afterwards. It could last up to 2 minutes. I was like, I can't do that. It's awful. But that was one of the first psychiatrists I had, and I was about 15, or I think I was 15, and he recommended shock therapy, and I was like, oh my god. And then later on, I look back on it, and I'm like, oh my god, that was way too early to do that. What are you doing? But
Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah.
just
It could have been bad training on his part, medical misdiagnosis. It really could have been a lot of things. Generally, they only use electroshock therapy as like a severe last resort.
hmm And that's what I read about it too. And so, did you ever try Seroquel on you by any chance?
Once, and I had a really bad reaction to it.
That stuff is awful, man. I don't want to just go into my experiences, but they had at one point when I was in the war, they had me on 600 milligrams of it a night, and it's only supposed to be subscribed in 10 to 40 milligrams, and it just shows there's bad psychiatrists in the system. And there's even ones that'll try to prescribe Seroquel for alcoholism, which I don't know if that can treat that, but I don't feel like it should.
No, generally they would, well, if they know what they're doing, for alcoholism, especially if you're going through withdrawals, Librium.
Yeah, 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 definitely Librium. And what kind of medications like experiences do you have besides Seroquel? When I had a really bad reaction, they had me on all that, and didn't have any emotions for like a year because I was on that for like a year. But so what are some medications that didn't work for you besides Seroquel? What else did they try on you?
Um, they tried Xanax, Prozac, Abilify. Um, the list could go on. Those are the top three that I can remember. I'm currently on Trazodone. It's not really working out, but eh.
Does it feel so? I was on Trazodone I remember trying the one that you mentioned with an A in it. But anyway.
Abilify?
Yeah. I tried. I was on that. I was on a number. I think they tried Zoloft on me at one point. I was on Trazodone for a good amount of time, but I noticed that um, every time I woke up, I just felt like dirty, and my consciousness was just really like not focused when I woke up, and then
Yes.
that's kind of what it does, right? Like I really hated that feeling.
Yes. They currently have me on 300 milligrams of Trazodone.
Don't they usually start with like 75 or something like that? Yeah.
Uh-huh. And they're like, yeah, your insomnia is pretty bad. So we're just going to, Up the dosage. 150. Still not working. Okay, 200. Still not working. All right, 300. We'll give it a shot. Well, it's still not working. I wake up. I have that weird brain fog going on. Takes me a while to, kind of remember where I'm at. It's just like, where the hell am I? What the hell happened? Did I black out or something? No, I didn't drink last night. Okay, well, what the hell?
Yeah, no, that brain fog, that makes total sense. And it kind of sucks for schizophrenics because like we have to kind of wait to see how a medication will work, maybe a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, to kind of like really get in our system for really feel how it feels. And some of those days when we're on a bad medication, they can be really rough. Like,
Yes.
do you have any like what are some of those days that were really rough to where your brain chemistry just didn't feel right? Like what was that like?
That one's an interesting and kind of a loaded question, but okay.
I got a lot of them.
I was just out for a walk, and all of a sudden something flipped in my head. I don't know if it was the schizophrenia or me being bipolar. I was just hit with an insurgible amount of rage and depression at the same time. I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, okay, do I call the crisis line? Do I punch a tree? Do I go open palm thrust a random stranger, possibly get arrested? What do I do? I don't know.
I think a lot of people watching this are schizophrenic will also identify with that because I think we've all been there at one point because of the medications for sure, and without them. But yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good idea to just quit your medications cold turkey. If you feel that like a medication is on, setting you in a different mood, especially if you have like zero emotions after like a week or two, talk to the doctor, have them wean you off of it, and start something new.
100%. And the sad thing is about therapy and psychiatry. It's like it's almost like the prices have gone up. And while wages haven't, they like for instance, therapy now it's like $140 per session. Back, when I first started getting therapy, it was like 70.
Mm-hmm.
And just in general, have you had that experience with like those things just going up in price, even though our wages haven't really?
Yes, I have. I've kind of in the same boat as you. I started going to a therapist. I think I was 14? No, 13. And it was like $60 for a 2-hour session. Now, if I want to go see a therapist, it's like 200.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I'm like, okay, what the heck? Huh, okay. I guess your time really is valuable, but still. I know medical school is expensive, but dang.
Yeah, for real, man. It's just so, and I feel like the system should provide an equivalency or a therapist at some degree for free for at least some of the worst cases. I mean, all cases obviously, but I mean we've got to start with what we can get in the mental health industry because there's never a whole lot of funding for that, and I don't see it getting a lot of funding anytime soon, to be honest. And of course, big pharma, incentivizing nurse practitioners and psychiatrists to push certain medications because they'll make more money off of it. That's a huge part of the system too. That's a huge flaw that I feel like it'll take a while to work out. But does that kind of make sense?
Yes, and I agree with you 100%. I really do feel that there's a lot of people out there that are going undiagnosed or undiagnosed, and they need help, but either A, they don't have insurance, which is ridiculously expensive. B, they can't afford a visit. Another example of they don't have insurance and it's ridiculously expensive. Or they're just too afraid to, go get help.
100%. And it's so depressing because like for some reason I feel like people who have schizophrenia, we can kind of tell who else has schizophrenia. And when you're walking past some homeless people, like you're like that person is clearly schizophrenic. That's not just a drug. Like even if they are a drug addict, they might be self-medicating, but you can clearly tell who's a schizophrenic. And sometimes you might think somebody's a drug addict, and it's actually they're just schizophrenic, man, and they're unmedicated, untreated, and it's depressing. I mean, I feel like, and it's, not only is, drug addiction kind of like genetic, you're genetically predisposed to have some kind of, to develop
Stimuli.
yeah, yeah. But schizophrenia is genetic in a big way, and it's like, even if you don't, it's just you naturally. Like, you're not even, you just need treatment, you just need help, and they're not getting it. But it is depressing to see people that's like, okay, that person is clear schizophrenic, they're just not being helped. Is there have you talked with other schizophrenics in similar situations where they just can't afford stuff, and that's why they don't go to treatment or anything like that?
I've only encountered about 2 others. I did give them some resources and, gave them a clear path. Being a student studying psychology, trying to be a peer support specialist, trying to help people cope with this, among other things. It's like, this is the best I can do. It's like, I know what you're going through. Try this. These are the resources. You just have to go and really just force yourself to go, and hopefully you'll start feeling like yourself again.
Yeah, there's so many cases in society in general, and I guess this is a bigger topic, but there's so many cases with society in general where it's like, I feel like there should be more avenues for people, and we try to give them the avenues and do the best that we can. Because, I mean, I guess we have, some goodness in this at least, but it feels like it feels like there's a lot of traps in society itself. Um, Even for people in the LGBTQ community, they might feel trapped a lot of the time too, because there's a whole lot of restrictive. Well, there's more and more restrictive laws now, but it's a trap that it feels like it's hard for somebody who's already going through a very confusing situation that's counter to like societal expectations. But then when they don't have avenues to like deal with that or go through transition, it becomes incredibly hard for them. Do you feel like there's another lacking there in the system in regards to that?
I think there is. And there's also a very big stigma out there. As a society, we've been kind of like pre-programmed that, you know, guys should have this type of body, 6 packs abs, V platform, no mental emotion whatsoever. Perfect. Women should have, the curvy shape, all that other fun stuff. They don't tell you is, as a guy, what's going on in your head. It's not manly to express your emotions. Women, on the other hand, yeah, it's acceptable. And that's where the stigma really kicks in. And I think that is partially why a lot of people go undiagnosed or are afraid to seek any kind of assistance or help, even if they have resources, is they don't want to, break that stigma, or they're just afraid. Same thing with, the LGBTQ plus community is, yeah, there's a lot of stigma out there. I would know. And it is hard. It's very difficult. But as humans, we're designed to survive. We just have to come to realizations and seek other options and get help.
Yeah, yeah, and there's even though we don't have as many resources as we'd like, there are ways to get out of the darkness. Even if the ways are difficult, there's always a way out that doesn't end with suicide or anything like that. I guess we can kind of like end this segment with talking a little bit about suicide ideation, stuff like that. I think I've went through that before too, and when you're in that state of mind, it's almost like everything is darker in the sense that you're less likely to see avenues out that don't end in taking your life or something like that, and you're more likely to engage in self-destructive behavior. And it's such a like a restrictor for your intellect and for your mind at that time. And it really does feel like there's just no way out of that. But I mean, there always is. I mean, do you have experiences with that, and like what kind of helped you as far as your thinking goes?
Oh, yes, I've been there 4 times, actually. Obviously, I survived. Um, it's kind of difficult to explain. You feel worthless in some kind of aspect. It's just like, okay, I'm trying my best. Obviously, that's not good enough for some people. Why do I keep trying? Why am I doing this? Why do I keep pressing myself? You know what? Screw it. I'm just going to end it. And some people do. Some people don't. Um, Maybe they get halfway through it and then something clicks in their head and goes, you know what? Maybe this wasn't a good idea. And they go to the hospital. It's kind of all subjective. I've actually lost two very close friends to suicide um, for mental health issues because they just didn't know how to cope. Either they couldn't get help or the medications weren't working or they were the wrong dosage. I'm not sure. They wouldn't tell me. Um, it is very painful to see someone that you care for, in their life at a very young age, or any age for that matter, especially in that mannerism. Um, some people call it a selfless act because you really have no regard to how many people you potentially could be hurting emotionally, physically, spiritually, all the above.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good thing. If anyone ever has, suicidal idealizations, bring out a journal, write it down, vent, make a video log or something, just vent and then look at it maybe a day or two later and go, you know what? Why was I feeling that way?
Yeah, because moods, not only do moods change, it's not always mood. Sometimes the circumstances cause the mood, or you have schizophrenia and it's an ongoing issue like that happens recurringly. It
Yes.
yeah, it just happens again and again and again. Um, I- what's that old Stoic saying? Something about delay is the best medicine for anger, and sometimes we're just angry at life, angry at ourselves, angry at the world, and our chemical imbalance makes that even worse. And a lot of the time, it's a weird combination of anger and deep sadness, and it's this weird jumble of emotions that we really don't have words for that make us kind of in that state where we just want to end it and like just stop the experience of living. But I think that honestly, my also advice in a way would be to really to get it out on paper, get it out on video, get it out to somebody else, um, and just wait. Sometimes waiting it sounds so simple, but sometimes just waiting, just leaving that idea there and just trying to survive another day and see if things change, maybe 2 days, maybe 3 days, and not making that decision when you feel that way. Sometimes that can save lives. Certainly saved my life a number of times, and I imagine your life as well, right?
Yes. As my late grandfather once told me, patience is a virtue.
Yeah.
Treasure it and hold on to it. I'm like, okay. And, well, I'm still kicking, kind
Yeah.
of.
Hey, we're doing the best we can.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I definitely like to have you on the channel again in the future. But yeah, it was good talking to you, and I hope that anybody out there who has any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section below, and I'll try to get to you, and I'll inform Gabe if you have any questions for Gabe. And I hope to see you on the channel in the future. We can keep on talking afterwards. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for joining me on the channel, Gabe.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
No problem. And we'll be back at you in a future video.
All right. Sounds good.